hello. You join me today at the Oaks Lakes, where I'm going to be fishing the Thursday Open on Cedar Lake. I've drawn peg 56, nice peg, I've drawn it a few times before, so I'm hopeful it'll catch a few. I think there's about 15 of us here today, so plenty of room, and about 3 weeks ago there was some new fish stocked into the lake, some F1s between sort of 8 ounce and £1.5 pounds. So them new fish seem to have sort of woke everything up and obviously give you plenty of bites, plenty of action. So I've got about 10 minutes before the match starts, and I'll just quickly run you through my rigs and what my approach is going to be. With these new fish going in, the first thing I want to be doing is aiming to catch some of them in amongst my sort of older original fish. So my first approach is going to be to fish across to the island, and I'm going to fish pellets there. Just nice and simple, feeding some micros, maybe a little bit of ground bait, and fishing an expander pellet on the hook. So for that, I've gone for a 4x12 2-bikini Delta. Probably not as popular as the handmade patterns these days, but it's a float that I've always used for my sort of cold water pellet fishing. Really like the cane bristle that you can dot right down. Wire stem for stability and that sort of rounded body as well, so whatever happens I can hold on to it if the wind does pick up, which it is forecast to today. Forecast's not very good at all, to be honest. Hopefully they've got it wrong. So my 2-bikini Delta, that's a 4x12. It's tied on 0152 slick silk main line, and then just above my 6-inch hook length I've got a bulk of number 10s. I've then got a 6-inch hook length 0114, again aero slick silk, to a size 16 SFL hook. And just on that hook length I've got one single number 10 stot. Now a lot of people prefer to use a shorter hook length for pellet fishing, but for me at this time of year I don't like my knot that close to the hook, so I go for a 6-inch one, and with that stot on there it still shows up my bites. I can get it close to the hook, and I've not really got any problems with putting that stot on my hook length. I don't ever have problems getting broke. That's what I'm confident with, so that's what I tend to stick to. A nice simple rig, positive to show up the bites off them stockies, which can be a bit delicate. They'll sort of pick the bait up and not move a great deal. That's my first approach. My next rig is for fishing down the edge. Now there I'm going to throw some maggots in, hopefully target the older fish which are a bit bigger, build a weight a bit quicker. Again, same main line 0152, same hook length 0114, and that's got an 18 SFL. Float wise I've got a Malman Benny but with a carbon stem in it, so I can spread my shots out a little bit, which I've got there, spread out number 10s above my hook length, and I can just watch them shot register as the float's settling with that carbon stem. Again, number 10 stot on the hook length, but this time it's pushed right up to the hook length loop. If I want to move it closer to the hook, then I can by just sliding it down. And finally, I've got a rig for in the deeper water, sort of a top kit plus 2 and a little bit. Same main line again, same hook length, and that size 18 SFL. Float wise, I've got the same float as I'm using down the edge, Malman Benny, but with a carbon stem, this time in a 4x14. And that is shotted with a bulk of number 9 shot just here, about 20 inches from the hook, 3 number 10s below it, 2 on my main line, and again that last one on my hook length just pushed right up against that bottom knot. So again I can move it closer to the hook if I want, if I feel I'm not seeing my bites. If not, I can keep it where it is. I'm just going to throw maggots in there, again hopefully catch some of them old original fish. So bait wise, as you can see from my approach, really simple. I've got some micro pellets, fishery micros, which I've got to use here. I've just softened them up in some water. I've got some 4mm expanders for the hook, and then I've got my maggots. I brought 3 pints of maggots, so I've got enough to throw them down the edge and throw them on that short pole line in the deep water. The last thing I've got is just a little bit of ground bait. I've mixed up some thatchers, quite wet so it'll sink well, and I've gone for thatchers. My thinking behind it is these new fish have been reared on pellets, and thatchers is really heavily pellet based, nice and strong, nice and potent, so if I feel I need to feed a little bit of ground bait to draw some fish in, I'll just tap a bit of that in with my micros. So we'll be getting started soon. I'll go and finish setting a few little bits up, make sure my rigs are right, put my pots on my pole, and I'll join you again soon to let you know how I'm going. that is us an hour into the match, and it's not going brilliant, to be honest. Nowhere near as many bites as I expected to get. I think this is my 5th fish. Just little stockies, nothing very big, and I'm just not really getting any indications. Started off on a line straight in front, tapped a few micros in, a 4mm expander on the hook, expecting to catch straight away, and never had an indication. So after half an hour I've moved round to my right, started another line up there, caught one first chuck, probably within 30 seconds of going in, and again not another bite, so I'll give that maybe 15 more minutes. Went round to my left where I'm fishing now, and I've managed to catch another 4 there, so hopefully I've found a few fish now, and there'll be a few bites to have. But to start with, it's not looking great, so for now I'm just going to plod along. I'll keep fishing this left hand line for a bit. Hopefully as I start feeding a bit more regular, I'll start getting a few more bites and putting some fish in the net. Keep throwing maggots on that line down the middle and down this left hand edge, where hopefully I'll get a good run to sort of boost my weight and top up any little stockies I've caught across there. But for now I'm just going to keep going and hope things improve. So I'll come back in maybe another hour or so, and hopefully I'm updating you that things have improved, I'm getting loads of bites and it's starting to look good. So, 2 hours into the match now, and it has improved from what it was like. Started that new line to my left, which I mentioned in the last update, and I've had, I think, 16 or 17 fish now. And what's really interesting is sort of maybe 12 or 13 years ago, when I used to come here every weekend in winter, there seemed to be certain areas in certain pegs where you'd always catch some fish. And this peg and the peg to the left, peg 55, were very good pegs back then. Won loads of matches in winter, and me being lucky in the draw bag, I did draw them quite regular. And this tree in between the two pegs was always the place where you caught most fish. And as soon as I've gone in today there, I've got a bite. It's just strange how, for no reason, the same areas seem to hold fish, and whether it's something to do with the makeup of the bottom or the changes in the lake or what, I don't know. But from 15 years ago, that was, or 12 years ago, that was the best place to catch them. And it seems today that it's exactly the same. Slowed right up now though, so I've just come off that line, left it, gone back to my right where still can't get a bite. But it does sound like it's fishing quite hard around the lake, so I'll just keep plodding along for now and hope I can keep nicking a few fish. Something comes good. I feel like once I've rested that line and go back on it, I'll probably catch some more. So hopefully I do. Two things that, when there was some fish there, did seem to really get me a quick bite was, first of all, something that I find works really well for stockies. Catch a fish, and then when you go back in, just lower your rig in really slowly and not feed any bait. And that's probably 4 or 5 times I've done that. I've lowered my rig in, it's settled, and just gone straight under. I've caught one really, really fast. I always find with stockies, when there's a lot of them there, you can catch sort of 3 or 4 without feeding, in between feeds, and catch them really quick like that, and it just really speeds up your catch rate. Oh, I've got a bite to my right, and it's a skimmer. So that's worked really well. And then the other thing that's worked well is, and something I think a lot of people overlook with pellet fishing, people tend to lower the rig in, tap the bait in, lower the rig in with the feed. But one thing that has worked really well today is to put my rig in first, which obviously gives me the chance to lower it in without any bait, like I said, and hopefully catch a quick one. If you don't catch one, I can tap my bait in over the top. And quite often I've tapped my bait in over the top of my float, and as soon as it hits the water, my float's gone under. And I always feel like if you're always feeding your bait and then putting your rig in afterwards, you can miss out on a lot of fish that you catch like that. So it's definitely something worth keeping in mind. Obviously you don't need to do it every time. You can try it the other way around, lowering your rig in with your feed, but don't discount feeding after your rig's in, because it can definitely get you extra bites and get you really quick bites. And I was about to say that was a prime example of it, because I lowered my rig and then tapped my bait on top and my float went straight under, but unfortunately it's a skimmer again. But while it's hard, anything is worth catching, I suppose. Hours into the match now. It's slowed down a little bit, but by changing between sort of tapping my bait in and lowering my rig in with it, lowering my rig in and tapping my bait out afterwards, and also putting my rig in after I've caught one without feeding, like I mentioned, I keep managing to just nick an odd fish still. And I'm up to, I think, 25 fish now. Only 2 decent ones amongst them, the rest are stockies. It does sound like it's fishing quite hard, so as long as I'm still getting a few bites, I'm relatively happy. Hopefully I can get a run of proper fish, old original F1s, either down the middle where I'm throwing maggots, or down the edge at some point. I've tried them both a couple of times, not a bite on them yet, but I have seen 2 F1s top down the middle of the lake to my left. So I'm hopeful that they will turn up on one of them lines eventually. But as it is at the minute, it's still very difficult. Just an odd bite, keep catching one. Still only that line to my left as well. I think I've had 2 little stockies and a couple of skimmers to my right. It's just hard going. Oh, that one might actually be foul hooked. Something didn't seem right. One thing that's definitely worked is feeding a little bit of ground bait. Like I said before, I mixed up that little bit of Thatcher's, and when my peg had totally died after the initial run, feeding some of that has definitely brought it back to life. So at the minute I'm just feeding sort of a pinch of micros, 20 or 30 micros, and a tiny little bit of ground bait with them. I don't know if just that cloud or the fact that there's so many little particles on the bottom, just drawn a few fish in. I didn't feed it to start with. I do like to try and catch feeding just pellets if I can. Well, that's a better F1. This is what we want. Keep catching them stockies and catching an odd better fishing with them. I think this is the 3rd one I've had now. So if I can catch maybe, I feel like if I can catch maybe 40 stockies and 10 of these in with them, that should give me £50, which I think £50 will probably be a good weight today. Oh, hook's pulled out in the net. Hopefully catch a few of them at some point. If I can get a little run of them, like I said, down the middle, down the edge, I'll start catching odd ones in with my stockies across there. Then hopefully that'll bump my weight up quite a bit. So at the minute there's about 2¼ hours left. Plenty of time yet, anything could happen. So fingers crossed for a bit of luck, and I'll get back to you soon, hopefully with a positive update. Right, hour and a half of the match left, and I've got 39 fish, so it's reasonably steady. I had that sort of real good 45 minutes when I first started my new line-up that I spoke about, and then from then on I've just kept nicking fish, but only off that one line still. I don't seem to be able to get a bite anywhere else across. I've been on this deep line and down the edge a few times and not had a bite, but I've just caught my first F1 on this line sort of a minute or two ago, just before I started recording again. An F1 maybe £1.5, so I'm hopeful maybe a few could turn up on it and I can start getting some regular bites. If not, I'll come back off it, keep feeding it again. We've still got, like I said, an hour and a half, so there's no rush to just sit there and try and plunder this line. I can go back across, maybe catch a few more stockies and drop back on this again in 20 minutes, half an hour, and see if they've turned up. But I'm just going to give it another 5 minutes because I did get that one. No other signs yet, but they're worth waiting for because they're probably worth 3 of them smaller fish I'm catching across. Whole lake's fishing pretty hard by the sound of it. I know Gandhi's catching some fish on 45, I think he's got 40 odd pound, but no one seems to be running away with it. I mean, 40 odd pounds, he's probably got 10 or 12 pound more than me, but it's not impossible to catch that up, especially if I can start catching on this line. This one might be just a stocky again. Well, no, it's an older F1, but not the big ones I was hoping for. It doesn't look like a new one. Well, keep putting them in the net. Keep going, and I'll come back again in another hour or so towards the end of the match and let you know how it's gone. Hopefully by then I've been catching one a chuck on this short line. Right, we're coming into the last 20 minutes of the match, and I've now got 50 fish, 51 fish. Catching odd ones on this maggot short line now. A lot of them are still stockies, but I've had maybe 5 or 6 better F1s, sort of £1.5 size. Still getting a few bites. Oh, there's one. And yeah, it's gone quite well now. I know Gandhi was still catching on 45, but other than that, it sounds hard. So maybe if I can catch a few better ones in this last little bit, you never know. And a quick run of them would do really nicely. So I'll come back again at the end of the match and let you know what I've finished up with. So what started out looking like it was going to be a terrible day, that first sort of 45 minutes when I hadn't caught anything, was looking like a real struggle, but in the end I've had a brilliant day. I've caught 55 fish in the end, mostly across on pellets, little stockies, and then I've finished up short where I've caught, since the last update, I think I've had another 4 or 5 proper ones. I've maybe caught 3 or 4 before that and a few more stockies on that as well. So really nice day. Probably got £60 I would think, just over £60. So hopefully that's enough to sneak in the frame, but if not, I've had a great day anyway. So once I've weighed in and packed up, I'll update you on the result, probably from the warmth of my own living room because I'm freezing now. But thanks very much for watching, and hope you'll subscribe and continue to watch the videos. Well, that's me home now from a brilliant day at the Oaks. Loads and loads of bites. I've caught lots of them little stockies, and then I've caught a few better fish late on. And them stockies seem to have been caught right round the lake. They're not really shoaled up tightly. Obviously, there's more in some areas than others, but they've provided bites for most people. And as it gets colder and the winter progresses, that's obviously going to be a massive bonus. Keep people catching some fish, keep putting something in your net, and sort of keep you going during the coldest months when there's not a lot else to catch. So really good decision from the fishery to put them in. As far as results go, they've actually weighed a little bit less than I thought, them stockies. I thought they'd probably average sort of close to £1, but they've probably averaged maybe 10 ounces. So I thought he had 60 to 65 pound. I've actually weighed him 56 pound. But it's been a really hard day, and that's been good enough for second in the match. Gandhi's won the match with 84 pound, so long way ahead of everyone else. He said he's had sort of 50 to 60 fish, so very similar to what I've caught, but he's had a few better fishing amongst them, sort of a lot more of the 2 to 3 pound original F1s. Now, he's won so many matches this year at that venue, so consistent, he's always going to be really hard to beat. So I think coming second and being beaten by Gandhi's not something to be disappointed with. So brilliant day. I hope you've all enjoyed it. It's my first attempt at a live match video. So I'll be doing more of them going forward. If you have enjoyed it and if you're going to keep watching, please subscribe, and I'll see you again next time.